Welcome to Charm of the Wilderness, where we embark on a journey through the stunning landscapes of our national parks and public lands, expanding our understanding of climate justice and Indigenous justice along the way. I'm Elizabeth Dorr, your guide in exploring the rich tapestry of our national parks and public lands, discovering not only their breathtaking beauty, but also the vital lessons they hold for our planet's future, as well as the challenging history and current political context of these parks and public lands. Join me as I talk to inspiring, innovative, and driven people working in environmental justice, climate science, Indigenous education, equity in the outdoors, and more to delve into pressing environmental issues and learn how we can advocate for a more equitable and sustainable world for all. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cramming for the Apocalypse. I am Elizabeth Dorr, your host, and I have a co-host today for part of my interview, and he's going to be really shy. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Finch, and I'm 9 and in 3rd grade.
Today, we are here with Aaron Johnson, who I am really excited to bring on because Finch and I have been reading his National Park Mystery series together. I believe, it's halfway through, right? Yep. So there's 5 out of 10 books. So by way of introduction, Aaron is the best-selling author of the National Park Mystery series, which is a middle grade adventure collection that takes young readers deep into America's most breathtaking landscapes. Drawing on his background as an educator and artist, Aaron creates immersive mysteries that blend real history with heart-pounding adventure. And we can attest to that. There are some definite thrilling moments. His stories are built around a simple belief: children are wired for exploration. By placing relatable young characters in high-stakes situations within real national parks, Aaron invites readers to step into worlds that feel both magical and grounded in reality. The result is a page-turning series that cultivates curiosity, resilience, and love for the outdoors. And families like us often read these aloud together, and teachers appreciate the way the stories naturally introduce historical and cultural context without sacrificing momentum. And I can attest to that. We've had a lot of conversations about history and the real people in the books. Aaron lives with his wife and 2 daughters in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of Colorado. When he's not writing, he's often hiking, sketching, or researching future adventures. We'll talk a little bit more about how to find out about the books at the end, but I am so excited to have you here. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited. So let's just start off. Before we get into the books themselves, tell us about yourself and how you came to write this series.
Yeah, it's funny. I usually start with thinking of myself or introducing myself as an entrepreneur, a 4th generation entrepreneur, rather than an author. But that's pretty fun. Both of my grandfathers were writers.
Oh,
one
cool!
Wrote for newspaper.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the other wrote for for himself. He was a crane operator with, I think, an 8th grade education, and just loved mystery novels. He was always telling us stories. So I was always around story, always around creating. My dad's an artist and an entrepreneur. And I just love making things, but always just thought in terms of story. And then I really wanted to write. I got this desire in my late 20s to be able to write kids' books. At the time, I just thought it was kids' books. I didn't realize it was middle grade mystery adventure.
I feel like now that I have him, I'm learning what the difference is.
Yeah, there's all these genres. And I had a moment where I had been thinking about this for a few years and just working on some writing projects and having fun with it while I was working my full-time job. And I was on vacation with our daughters, spring break in Tucson, down at their grandpa's, my wife's dad's. They live right up against Saguaro National Park, really close to it.
Oh, amazing.
And he volunteers there on occasion. And we were in the gift shop, and I was looking at books, and I was like, man, why isn't there a kid's series set in the national parks? And I was like, that's what I want to write. Like in that moment, I was like, this is it. It all came together.
Isn't it funny how that happens? I've had that too. A friend of mine, I feel very similarly as far as entrepreneurship goes. It wasn't actually what I intended to do with originally in my life. I think sometimes we fall into that, but I have related to this book project that I'm doing. A friend of mine and I actually have a similar idea that I really want a way to facilitate having conversations about the parks and nature. That the Junior Ranger program does that, but there's also some gaps, and there's so much driving within the national parks. There are
Yeah.
so many opportunities to have conversations, and so we're thinking about that too.
So much driving.
Yeah, so much driving. So
Yeah.
can you give us a quick summary of the series? Obviously, Finch and I know the series completely, at least up until to the fifth book. Just a brief summary of who the characters are and what the story is.
Yeah, the main character is Jake, and Jake is 13. It's the end of the school year when the story starts, and his family is starting a little over 2-month vacation through 10 national parks in the West. He lives in Ohio.
Honestly,
That's
it
where I
sounds
grew
like
up.
such a dream to take 2 months off and go to a bunch of national parks.
Right?
I know.
Yeah. And his grandpa had actually set this trip up, booked the campsites, a lot of the campsites, got permits, planned their itinerary before he passed away. So his grandpa passed away around about 6 months before the book starts. The book starts in May. I think his grandpa passed away in like around Thanksgiving. And Jake gets right before he leaves, he finds this old scrapbook from his grandpa. And then during their drive, because they're making a long drive to their first national park, he discovers that inside the scrapbook are like these clues for a scavenger hunt, and it just keeps going. And so that becomes really the organizing element for the entire series, is this scrapbook. And along the way, they're picking up more artifacts and discovering new things, until the running joke with my editing partner is, it's like they have a traveling museum. And there are so many things to keep track of. That's one of the challenges of writing the series, is there's so much. But Jake is joined at Rocky Mountain National Park by his cousin Wes, who is 12 and who will be turning 13 in one of these books.
Ooh, a birthday.
Yeah. Wes tends to be most people's favorite character.
Wes is great.
Super fun, lots of funny jokes, and he's very precocious and forgetful sometimes too. He's super smart that he forgets like how to tie his shoes. And they have, it's fun. I loved what he and Jake, their relationship grows, of course, over the books. And then by book 4, he really comes to his cousin's defense in a certain situation, because he loves his cousin like a brother or like a sibling. And then their other friend is Amber. Amber's parents join the other 2 families on this trip. So there are 3 families, which is also challenging, because a lot of times middle grade books get rid of the parents. You've got and I see why people do that, because it's really hard to write parents into.
And also the real life things that parents will do, try to get them not to do something dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So I have it's interesting. The most critical readers of the series are adults, because like adults who have a difficult time maybe suspending disbelief or handling ambiguity.
I can see that.
I'm very fine with ambiguity as a person, but yeah, that can be a bit of a challenge. Like, how do you have parents actively involved in the kids, and then also kids' lives, but also allowing them to go on adventures? It's in a short book, a book that's not 600 pages. It can be challenging to accomplish. Sometimes I think I do it well. Sometimes I can do it better, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you do a great job, because they have a lot of freedom, but also you have this great structure that you put in with the parents, especially Wes's dad, who is like very knowledgeable about the outdoors, and they have all the tools to keep them safe, but also giving them the autonomy to do what they want safely in the outdoors. And I think that one, for me, I think I had read in one of your Q&As at the back that you probably wouldn't have given your kids as much freedom in real life, because it's a little different. But at the same time, I think it's really, as a parent, it's inspiring to be like, our kids are a lot more capable than we think, that we can give them some autonomy within reason and trust them. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's the tension of being a parent all the time, right? Like, as almost 6 months pass, they develop so much. And so if we were to hold on to all that, like our own personal need for safety, we stunt the kids. But then if we don't protect, which is part of our responsibility as parents, then we could be putting our kids in danger. So it's like it's a constant set of decisions.
Yeah.
It's not like one decision we get to make. We can't just make the decision once. We got to make it
Yeah, totally.
and grow with it.
I have more questions about the characters to ask you, but I'm going to bring Finch in because he would like to ask his questions. Can you get up?
All right.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your questions, Finch.
Okay. Remember to speak into the microphone.
How did you get your idea for the book series?
Oh, I love this. I love this question. So when I get this question, I tell people that I think of ideas like a good soup, and ideas are like ingredients. And in life, you don't really have time to act on all your ideas, but the key is, and a lot of your ideas are not really great ideas. Some are good, some are some are not very good, but you keep all of them and you throw them into this pot and you let them stew. And see, what happens is the other opportunity would be to throw them away. But instead of throwing them away, I'd like to gather experiences, travel. There's a lot of writing that I'll do, a lot of chapters I'll write and throw away a lot of it and keep some of it. But sometimes it comes back because I just put it into this big idea soup and I let it cook. And then new ideas come out of it. I had one, I wish I could tell you, but it'd ruin the story, but I had one for book 6 the other night. It just came to me out of nowhere. And I looked at my daughter and I was like, Wes is going to do this. And she's, that's genius. And I was like, yeah, I don't even feel like I came up with the idea. I just felt like Wes did it. So I've got this imaginary pot of ideas that is always bubbling new things up.
That's cool. Ooh, now I'm excited to see what Wes does. Is that in the 6th book that you're working on?
Yeah.
Ooh, next one. Do you want to ask the next question?
What do you love about the national parks?
Oh, wow. There's so much. I'm trying to think of some moments and what I've felt when I'm there. Like I think of being in Zion National Park and stunned by the different colors that each place is like, it has its own character. Like each person looks different and acts different. And it's like you're meeting a person in a lot of ways, the landscape. I think too, and you'll notice this in the books, I'm always like, I love how my body responds in different ways to national parks. Like when you're standing in Yosemite, what's really interesting to me is that my body can't comprehend it. I keep trying to compare it to stuff and nothing really works. So that's one of the other things. I like how each of the different parks kind of imprints on how it talks to me in a way.
Yeah. We were just in Zion and Bryce and Arches. Arches was your favorite, right, Finch?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what it was so cool. These are all in the same region. They all have similar rocks, but like the formations are so different from one another.
Yeah, so different.
Yeah, they're so different from one another. And you're right. They have their own personality. And I can even think of the Bryce in particular with the hoodoos. Like they really have a personality.
Yeah, they look like people.
They really do. And that's what the indigenous stories are, of that they are people frozen by a spirit. And is there anything else you want to ask? No. Okay. Can you say thank you? It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
All right. He's going to take his leave. Yeah. I didn't actually know we didn't have school today until 2 weeks ago. Here we are.
That's fun how it worked out. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And he kept asking me, he's like, when are you going to meet Aaron Johnson? When are you going to meet Aaron Johnson? But I want to go back to we'll talk a little bit more about the national parks too, but to the characters, one of the things that I also appreciate is how you approach diversity in the books. Wes is biracial. His mom is Black and his dad is white. And Amber is Latina. Her parents are both from Argentina, and sometimes they speak Spanish together. And also the situation that you were talking about, that Jake went to the defense of Wes, was related to race. And so I really appreciate how those elements are in the books as well. They're not the center of the story, but they're part of the story of the kids and who they are. And so I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about that and how and why that's important in a book about the national parks and nature in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me growing up, I grew up in a really small town in the Midwest. So it wasn't a very diverse town necessarily, but my parents really valued, we'd travel a good, and they really just valued people.
Mhm.
Like, and meeting people from other backgrounds and cultures. My mom, like if you sit beside my mom on an airplane, she'll have your life story before you deboard the plane.
Oh my God.
And for instance, when I was 12, she wanted me to get to know Anna Bennett, I think it's book 2. One of my books is devoted to or dedicated to. Anna was 80 when I met her, African American woman who lived through civil rights and all of that. And I would go and mow her lawn and then hang out. I'd clean her chandelier in her house and stuff. And she was, after a while, constrained to a wheelchair. And I was 12, she's 80, and she treated me like an adult. Like we became super close friends. And for years until I would be in college and biking home, and I would think I've got to stop and see Anna. She might not be alive tomorrow.
Oh.
I just never knew like how long she would live. She lived until the spring of '99.
Oh wow, yeah.
And she, I feel like set a lot of the stage for thinking through and understanding just how race works and doesn't work, like how in our lives for me. And so a lot of times when I go to say something like this, I try, like in book 4, I don't start with an idea of, oh, I want Wes to experience or Jake to have to deal with it. My friend who we trade chapters back and forth, she said, you made Wes biracial, so this was just bound to come up. And I was like, you're right. It was bound to come up. Like his parents say, they have like code words for when these things happen because it happens. And I think I just have to reflect on my limited experience. A lot of what I would say I wish I could think of what you would call it. But in my little town, it was almost like, it was like a religious tension. And I remember birthday parties because I had grown up a part of a certain denomination. I wasn't invited over friends' houses. Things were said about me, racist, but it's like that feeling of being disincluded or labeled or bad. And you're a kid and you're like, I don't understand why these people don't like me. I don't even know them. So pulling on some of my own limited experience in that. But yeah, in the story of the national parks, I feel like Ken Burns and Dayton Duncan have done a really great job in some of the writing and films. There's so much diversity. Like I love that so much of the preservation on the East Coast of the Great Smoky Mountains is from a guy of like Asian descent. Like,
oh wow,
it's not what I would have thought. I would have thought, oh, maybe Yosemite. And so, yeah, I think it just cultures interest me.
Yeah, yeah.
Just how do people, they think differently. They have different language. Yeah. It's just kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you did it. It came off as very natural to me in the way that experience that Wes had and the way his parents dealt with it, and also had conversations with the other kids about it. Jake is white. And so it wasn't his personal experience. And so he had to kind of learn what it was like to be Wes in a way and biracial. And it was, yeah. And I have one of the other folks I've interviewed who's going to be on the podcast. He does research around diversity and the national parks. And it's fascinating too, because like he said the same thing, that just how the origins of the national parks, the people who were involved in creating it was incredibly diverse. However, the people who visit national parks are mostly white. And like you said, that was bound to happen on a 2-month trip.
Because it's like,
yeah, my
experience has actually been this very different.
Oh,
like I'm in Yosemite,
and
like we're the few white people or Caucasian people, and everyone else is Chinese.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one joke I want to have in there where Wes is like, man, nobody here, because at Rainier, like when we were at the visitor center, there was very little English being spoken. And
really?
Wes say something like, man, no one's speaking American here.
I can see Wes saying that.
It's totally something you would say. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people, I think there's probably a lot of truth to that
Yeah.
in different parks. But yeah, at least in the parks I've been to, I've been struck by the diversity of the people visiting.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool.
I'm curious how that will change now that they've raised the prices for foreign visitors. That's so much of the economy around local communities near national parks is tourism. And so many of the tourists are not from the US, and now they're going to have to pay more money to enter them. So we'll see what happens this year. Yeah. What kind of research goes into writing the series? I know from trying to plan this interview that you were off in a national park doing research, doing field research. So tell me a little bit about what goes into that.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain was easy to write because I've spent over 6 months either leading at different times, leading either 1 week long trips or solo hiking or doing day trips in the park. And so a lot of time on both the east and the west side and getting to know it. And and then some of it is, of course, visiting a park like that. And I just love reading. So there's a lot of reading. Like I've got books behind me on George Burt Grinnell and Glacial National Park and where do different places get their names? And then sometimes just digging into even historical documents when I'm really interested about something. And that's where I'll discover things like in the first book, discovered a place called the Apache Fort. And I did a video on YouTube about this, how I had found the Apache Fort referenced in an old document. And then I was at the park and I was talking to 3 rangers and I was trying to find out exactly where it was and they'd never heard of it.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. They were so excited. Like all of a sudden, I wish I had a picture of it because the 4 of us were all like leaned in. One of the older rangers, 2 young guys.
Cool.
Yeah. Super, super fun. So yeah, those research trips. And then I'm trying to think of what Google Earth is really fascinating. I was doing a lot of research on Rainier last week, and it's a great way to be able to get like this aerial view of the land and an understanding of kind of how different watersheds work and where different locations are, landmarks are, stuff like that.
That's really cool. That's cool. Tell me a little bit, speaking of research, there are a number of historical figures that are featured in the book. One of the things that we didn't talk about earlier is that the plot also includes a flashback to the 1880s, correct?
Yeah.
Hundreds. And there are actual people from history in those sections. They make more cameos, I think, than being like central to the actual story. But tell me a little bit about the real historical figures that you featured and who are they and why did you decide to include them?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. So I grew up in a house built in 1850. My parents lived there. We're the 4th owners of the home since 1850, and my parents lived there the longest. And growing up, I would just find things. I'd find artifacts, and I'd look at these things, and I'd think, "Oh, this has got a story. Whose was this? Was this Mr. or Mrs. Martindale's? Did this belong to Mr. McGregor? Was this from like Senator Kyle's when he was growing up?" It had this sense that I stepped into somebody else's story, and that always has felt like magic to me.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to try to write it into a book. And I've always had this like sense that like historical figures are not too far away. Like when I talked to my friend Anna, she would have known people who were related like one generation from being in slavery. It's wow, but isn't that back in like the mid 1800s? Yeah, it's not that long ago. I had a friend whose grandma knew the Wright brothers. It was like a little adopted sister of theirs. And then McGregor, who had owned our house before us, he was an admiral in the Pacific Theater during World War II and was friends with Truman. And that his room where the ham radio was in my bedroom growing up.
Oh, cool.
And Mrs. McGregor, we knew these people. So I was trying to think through, okay, what would it be like to connect the story to these historical figures? Because they're not as far away.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, it feels like time travel, but almost better to me. And so in book 1, one of the bad guys is a guy named Dunraven. And I discovered this guy actually by hiking. I was hiking the Dunraven Trail in Estes Park, actually in a place called Glen Haven in Rocky Mountain National. And of course, I was wondering, okay, who is this person? Wait, his name's Lord Dunraven, and this guy came over from England, and he was basically trying to take over the entire valley, and he was using, it was well known, illegal means to acquire land. And so I then want to imagine, oh, what was he like? He hired this guy to do his dirty work, and yeah, so I tried to base it on
That's cool.
real documents. Yeah. And then one of my favorites is I read a book called I Am the Grand Canyon about the Havasupai people and their land lives within the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And the history of that and the history of fighting to get their land back that was taken away from them. And it really was a matter of survival for them because they needed the plateau land.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, one of the characters, I'm probably not pronouncing his name correctly, but Gazwedva, was a real person and a real person of character who helped really keep his people together. And I guess even as far back as the 70s, you could go and there's a place in the Grand Canyon where basically the smoke from his fire is still there.
Oh, wow.
Where he would camp. Yeah.
That's so cool. I have just added that to my to read list. I Am the Grand Canyon. So I will put that on my list too. Yeah, I am excited to read it. Yeah. And I know a little bit about the Havasupai people because I have a friend who worked in Arizona and had done some partnership work with them. And she had gone to the town of Supai, which is really only accessible by air, by helicopter or foot,
hiking or donkeys.
Yeah. And and it sounds but they have really done such an incredible job as in the Havasupai people, at preserving their culture, their language in some ways, and also being really incredible advocates for the land and nature and really seeing people as stewards of the environment, as most Indigenous people feel with the land that is their land, that they are bound to steward it. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. I'm excited to read that. And yeah, tell me a little bit about what your hopes for readers to learn from the series, to get from the series. What is your hope with that?
Yeah, I think one of the big surprising things is how much, in particular, grandparents and grandkids have enjoyed the series together, whether that's reading over FaceTime or in person or just talking about the series. I was talking with some grandparents from church, and they were taking their kids on a drive, I think to Arizona or New Mexico, and they were listening to the books and pausing and talking about them. And that's been a big surprise for me because I get emails about this almost every week, this grandparent connection.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And I guess it's a bit of the legacy of my relationship with my own grandparents. I was very close with my grandparents on both sides of my family. They were both in a mile direction and different directions. Even my great grandparents. Oh, it was. I thought it was normal. And then I started meeting friends in college and they didn't really know their grandparents very well. And I was totally surprised. But I was also close in age. My grandma had my mom when she was pretty young. And my grandma, I think, was 37 when I was born.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We got to
when I had my son.
We got to go on adventures together. I remember my grandma and they lived in the Virgin Islands in St. Croix, and there was this palace up on one end of the island, I think on the east end of the island, and nobody could figure out how to get to this palace. And she was determined to find it. And she's like, Aaron, we are going to find it. And so we found this hidden road, and we finally understood why it was hidden. And then there were armed guards. So we turned around and we got out of there, but it was so fun.
I love that.
But yeah, I think it was part of my own legacy to pass on.
I love that. And it makes it also, it was clear that Jake had a really close relationship with his grandfather. And in the story, he plays a big part, even though he's not alive. He plays a really essential part to this. And it's actually really beautiful to see Jake navigate his emotions of grief, but also the kind of adventure that his grandfather is still giving to him after he's died. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's been even that kind of sub point of, I've had my cousin, I've had someone write me even just, I think yesterday, about how the books have helped them navigate grief
Oh,
and
cool.
losing. Yeah. And it makes sense. Yeah. I've had a lot of grief to navigate in my younger years.
Mhm.
And it works its way into the book. Because I think the people we love continue to have an imprint on our lives, and they're, in a lot of ways, they're not gone. Like, they still bear an imprint on our hearts and our actions and our behaviors and what we value that comes out. I think one of the other big things is I want to raise people's affections for nature. And I think that comes through having an experience. And that could be, hopefully, getting outside and actually experiencing the land around you and letting that work on your heart. But sometimes it's just being in a book and having the experience alongside the characters, and it stirs this affection. And then you treasure what you have affection for, and you protect it and you care for it in a different way. And so that's another one of my hopes.
Yeah. I think that there really is a power in exploring the national parks through the story. I think not everybody's going to be able to go to national parks. It's a lot of money to go on these trips, and they're far away depending on where you are. And you're not going to be able to go to all of the national parks. What better way to learn about them than through a story? And I'll just take it from a reader. You really get to know these parks. You've explored certain areas that we wouldn't have even thought to go to. We're already like, oh, when we go back to Yosemite, we're going to do this. And it's really, but then also, I don't know if I'm going to be going to all of the parks. I don't know if we'll end up going to Rocky Mountain National Park, but I got to learn about it. And also, it's Great Sand Dunes, which didn't know anything about until I read the book. So it's been really fun reading alongside my son. I think at this point, I'm not going to let him read them on his own because I want to know what happens. And I've become attached to the characters. So it's been a really fun experience. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about related to the book, the national parks, or the writing experience?
I think so much of it, probably just wanting kids to have, and adults too, to feel like they're having a process of discovery. I'm sure like a lot of people have read these choose your own adventure type books. Yeah. And I love that because I was a participant, and in the code breaking and the kind of going from, I call it clue to clue in the books, I try to write it in such a way where we're having the experience alongside Jake, Wes, and Amber, that maybe we really could figure this out. And some kids do, ahead of the characters or with the characters, or I've put in enough work that it feels like I earned the solving of the clue by the time I get there. And that's a really fun experience. I think one of the other surprising things is kids who are more like neurodivergent, who might be dyslexic or on the spectrum. I've had a lot of parents email me and say, yeah, my son or daughter really didn't have interest in reading or in books, and this is the first book they're able to listen to, or the first book that they've read. And that's been a surprising piece to me. And I was thinking about it this last week, because a lot of the books on writing, they tell you to write character first. What's the character want? Then put something in their way, and then they have to negotiate that conflict. And I was trying to write that way on this last book, and I just couldn't do it. I layer that in.
Yeah.
But I start with the place. Where do they go next? What's the hike? Like the tangible, grounded pieces. And I've wondered if maybe that's a big difference in the series for kids who are a little or more like in that space. And that was me growing up. I love stories. I didn't really enjoy reading until probably 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And I think it feels a bit abstract a lot of times to kids, like middle graders, that like this idea of negotiating characters need. Maybe they just want to go on an adventure.
The tension.
Maybe just discovering what's next is it.
Yeah.
That's enough.
I like that. But I think that's also, as a writer myself, like not everybody writes the same way. And sometimes we have to do it differently. And some people like to, what is it, plotting versus pantsing? So my writers group talks about it a lot, but I think I'm more of a pantser. I write nonfiction. And so for me, it's like I have an idea and I'm just going to start and then it'll come to me eventually. It is so great to meet you. Can you tell everybody where they can find you and your books?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, nationalparkmysteryseries.com. We also have a store on there, and I have a progress page for book 6 that I'm finally working on. And then, on Amazon's a great place to pick us up as well. The entire series is there. We have a YouTube channel where we're creating like more like educational type resources. We do have an educators page with some downloads for vocabulary and soon some discussion guides, things like that.
I love that. And those are great for parents too, to navigate
totally.
the conversation. And you also have some resources at the back of each book as well, and talking about planning trips and all of that, which is really cool. I also want to put a plug in for the store. If you get the books off of the National Park Mystery Series website, you get some kind of extra little bonuses, like a sticker and a bookmark, which I know that we got a couple of them from like Bookshop, but then when we ordered the latest one, the Yosemite one from your site, we got a bookmark and a sticker, and Finch was so excited.
Yeah, the bookmarks have little codes on the back.
Yeah,
and the stickers have hidden symbols or hidden.
Ooh, I didn't even notice that. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Check out the stickers.
I'm gonna go buy. I'm gonna get more. So plug.
The Zion one has 3 hidden arrowheads in it.
Ooh, okay, cool. It was a pleasure to have you. Really appreciate you coming, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Charm of the Wilderness. I hope you felt inspired to appreciate the richness of our public lands and national parks and the vital role they play in the climate justice movement. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can also receive these episodes right in your inbox by subscribing to Charm of the Wilderness on Substack. Together, we can raise awareness and foster a deeper connection with nature and each other. Until next time, keep exploring the wild charm around you, and remember, every little action counts in the fight for our planet. Stay curious and connected.